He's one of our favorite people to have here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch on WCPT and Mercado Airwaves. He covers the NBA, the NFL, and everything in between. He's one of our favorite people. Josh Buckhalter joins us today. You can check out all his work at Story Down South, Last Word on Sports. I mean, you're all over the place. We were talking about it before we started recording, and we get into this. How has it been with the Bears season, the way it ended, the way this Bulls season has evolved? Talk about, us in the sports world. How crazy has it been for you the last few weeks?
It's everywhere. There's been disappointment with the Bears. You get the excitement of the coaching changes and whatnot, but then you have the Bulls, like you said, giving you that hope that, hey, Chicago sports is still here. We got something to root for. They came around at the right time because it was right as the season for the Bears was going down the tank that the Bulls showed that they might have some staying power with this thing, and hopefully it keeps going. It's really been the best of both worlds.
So let's go into the negative first then, right? Let's save the good stuff for the end in the Chicago Bulls. So let's start over at Hallis Hall. Your thoughts when you were actually at a lot of these final home games, you were able to be up there close and personal to talk to some of these coaches and these players. And then you saw the George McCaskey press conference to end the season. What are your thoughts, how the vibes at the end of the season, kind of the optimism that was heading into that press conference, and in those 60 minutes, it almost seems like all the air in the room was let go. What are your thoughts about what happened since the last time we talked to you about the Chicago Bears?
Well, you nailed it about the air being taken out of that room. So those last couple of games, I was there in attendance, and listening to the players talk, they were very straightforward. It came off like they didn't maybe necessarily think Matt Nagy was a great coach, but they certainly respected him as a person. And then you get that block versus story from The Athletic where they kind of detailed how, his handling of the situation with Mitchell Trubisky and just his general day-to-day operations. And it's kind of like, wow, that's credit to this group for staying together. And that kind of just goes to show the strength of that locker room and the leaders that they had in there. And then you get George McCaskey after they dismiss Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace and seemingly intentionally just undoing all the goodwill he had built up just the day before. Like, it really made no sense. The path that he took, attacking Olin Kreutz and opening it up with talking about Parker Dickerson and it was weird. It's really bizarre. And then now they have this kind of prolonged coaching and GM search. When, in all honesty, it's really not that, because if you look around, only one team has hired a GM, and that was the Giants today. So people are kind of rushing this because we want to see it happen. But I guarantee you, had they hired somebody, they rushed to make a decision. It was the wrong decision. So you know how that goes. There's just no pleasing it.
And I think the big thing, and you mentioned it's like in sports fandom, we're always going to kind of be a little bit more on the pessimistic side, the skeptical side, if you will. But I think the Bears, unlike a lot of different teams, and I shouldn't say a lot of different teams, because if you're looking for a new GM and head coach, it's because your organization's in a bad spot. But they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Like right now, and we're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls in a little bit, but if any move that they make, any free agency move that they think they have to acquire when it comes to a big man, or if they're going to keep Io or Kobe, whatever, you give them the benefit of the doubt, because so far they've earned the right for you to give them a little bit of a leash, right? Quote unquote, for us here looking from the stands. But the Bears haven't earned that. And with that, you look at the field and you start seeing the names that the echo chamber, right? If you start hearing the same name over and over again, especially on your beats, you start seeing that there's smoke, there's fire. And there's two: Jim Caldwell, Leslie Frazier. We talked about Leslie Frazier last week. Jim Caldwell, I think, got a raw deal, especially in Detroit. But your thoughts, when you hear those two names, do they excite you? Are you looking for a Harbaugh? Where are you when it comes to the head coaching search? Because I think the GM search is a little bit more of a for us in this, we might know the name. You might get excited about the name, but that's just a name. That's going to be the faceless person up in the office. Coaching-wise, this is where it really impacts the team right away. Where are you at with the head coaching position?
So I'm with you on the GM search. I will say that when everybody was kind of up in arms or waiting to see what, the big response was when Ed Dodds pulled his name out. Yeah. And then come to find out he's done it the past few seasons. So he was the guy who was on my list. But once he pulled out, I was like, okay, well, you move on, because as you said, it's a name. You're not really sure what their duties are in the organization that they're coming from. Head coaches, though. The Bears search, I put it this way. There is a lot of names, and people have worded they can kind of get diluted with what their search is actually trying to be, who the good coaches are. I will say that of those candidates, if the worst two are Leslie Frazier and Jim Caldwell, they're in pretty good shape, because at the very least, Leslie Frazier's an adult in the room. And as I told you, as we learned from that athletic report, Matt Nagy was not always that. And so it's probably the least exciting move you can do to upgrade your head coaching position, but it's still an upgrade just in professionalism. And I think that is, in and of itself, probably where people are upset. Because you can't hate the move, but you don't really love it. And that indifference is almost worse than not having any type of a negative or a positive response. And then on the other side with Jim Caldwell, he did get a raw deal, but I am kind of where everybody else is with Leslie Frazier with Jim Caldwell. As good of a coach as he is, he's been out for a long time. Like, come on now. You got the Texans trying to give Josh McCown a job, and Jim Caldwell's been this great coach who hasn't gotten back. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve another chance, but I'm not gonna, I don't understand how he's viewed so differently than Leslie Frazier is. Like, Leslie Frazier had a good season with Minnesota before things went downhill and people got hurt. Like, he had Christian Ponder at quarterback. So there's some pessimism that you said they have not earned the benefit of the doubt. They've actually squandered that. So, but to their credit, they know that, because in that same press conference, in a moment of clarity, George said, doesn't matter who I hire and what I say today, nobody's going to like it. So he was spot on, but now they got to produce a winning culture, a winning organization, because I think people are really just tired of hearing the same old song and dance.
And I think, you and I have talked about this, and whether it's been on the Sports Cubicle or the Rewind Sports 60, and you're seeing in the NFL right now, you have Chico, Ron Rivera, Aladdin coach in the NFL, and then you have Brian Flores, who was fired, leaving only Mike Tomlin as the only black head coach in the NFL. It is crazy to see how all this is kind of shaked out, but the Bears are in this interviewing minority coaches. It's just not Doug Peterson coming in and getting the job right away. And I think there's something to that. So, I mean, before we move on to the NBA and to the Chicago Bulls, I mean, your thoughts kind of big picture wise on that kind of statement in the NFL, where Brian Flores probably will get a job in New York because of his connection to Deshaun Watson. But beyond that, like the Rooney Rule, the clown show that really is, even though it's supposed to allow you to do this. If the Raiders go and get Jim Harbaugh, did it ever really exist? I mean, you watching this from afar, what are your thoughts on this whole coaching search and how minority coaches aren't a thing right now?
Well, it's a pipeline issue. Outside of connections, right? Who you know, it's what you know. And a lot of minority coaches aren't coming up on the offensive. They weren't coming up on the offensive side of the ball. That has changed in recent years, especially with the amount of black quarterbacks that have come through the college ranks, not to make it in the NFL. I think you would see a lot more of that taken up. You have a guy like Eric Bieniemy out in Kansas City who I think would have gotten his chance. His past has had some issues, but then you've also got the stink of Matt Nagy as the last Chiefs coordinator to come out and try to do something. So there's double negatives on him that's not necessarily entirely his fault, the rest were, but not the Nagy stuff. And so it's a pipeline issue, though. This is not necessarily at the top issue. You gotta get these guys funneled in from the levels of quarterback coach, offensive line coaches. You got to get them. We've seen plenty of running backs coaches, but they don't get to the point where they're calling plays and stuff because the league has changed. That was more the case back in the day than it is now, which is why I think you saw kind of that spike and then that dwindle down in the numbers of black head coaches. So there's some work that needs to be done, but they got to start at the grassroots.
And we'll see if the Bears are in front of that with their coaching hire soon to be announced. We'll see whether it's in the next week or two. Our friend of the show, the one and only Josh Buckhalter, joining us. Make sure you're checking out all his work at Soaring Down South, Last Word on Sports, Last Word on NFL on Twitter, and of course, checking out all his work at Triple Zeros. He's covering everything like a madman, and we love him for it because he's on top of everything and giving us amazing content. And speaking of great content, the Chicago Bulls doing the damn thing, and whether it's injuries, whether it's COVID, they have found a way to stay afloat. And this Lonzo Ball news was devastating for Bulls fans and a real bummer for NBA fans trying to see him grow into this position where a lot of people thought he was going to be coming out of college. And you're seeing the development of Ayo Dosunmu. You've seen Kobe White. The Bulls, where they're at right now, no Zach LaVine, just getting back Caruso. You lose Lonzo Ball for about 8 weeks. Are you worried about the Chicago Bulls, the number one seed right now, and a matchup against Milwaukee moving forward the next, let's say, 2-3 months in the NBA season?
So we'll go with tonight with Milwaukee. No, I think Milwaukee's probably the better team. We'll see. Bulls play better teams tough, right? They tend to. We have seen them get smoked by the Warriors, and the Nets gave them problems. Long term, I'm not too worried. Lonzo got it cleaned up now. 6 to 8 weeks was his prognosis. He'll have the surgery next week, I believe Billy Donovan said. So that's when the timetable will start. That brings him back towards the middle or end of March. I already talked about it. The next stretch of games through the end of February, very winnable. Through February, 19 games. 7 of those games are against teams that are currently in the playoffs, and then another 3 against teams that are qualified for the play-in. The Bulls will be able to beat the play-in teams, even without Lonzo Ball. You get to the playoffs, it's a toss-up. But if they can manage to go 500 with those teams and then still win those play-in games, they'll be in good shape when they get to March still, and that's the dog days where we're just trying to grind it out till Lonzo can get back. Once he gets back, he has enough time to get in shape, and then they get into the playoffs. I'm not concerned about the top seed. Get into the playoffs and make some noise, and maybe you get a matchup that's less inspired than an 8 seed trying to take down the 1, the David Goliath situation. I'm not sure. But bottom line is, no, I'm not too bothered or too worried about them. I do think, though, that they need to make a move for a big. So I would say if I'm worried, it's about that more than about Lonzo.
So do you make a move where you're moving a Kobe, a Williams, depending on where he's at with his injury? Or are you looking for whatever's going to happen with Paul Millsap, where a team is going to let somebody go? You had the Marcus Cousins out there. Whether these specific guys fit on the offense or what Billy Donovan wants to do with the Bulls is one thing. But that idea of finding a veteran like that, are you more looking to see if the front office is going to be aggressive with their assets, or do you think they're going to be more aggressive with money, with cachet?
So, to your point earlier about the Bears, I'm looking forward to them doing whatever they do. At this point, I don't think we should be expecting them to do anything because they've proven that they can do the unexpected. And at the same time, slow down on the judgment because a lot of people were painting this team as being a lottery team when the season began, only to find them sitting at the top of the standings when everything was going down and they were healthy. So they also got Caruso back. And so, I just, I want them to make the move. I've been of the thought process that Pat is probably not on the same timeline as this current team, but I'm not going to be upset either way that they go. If they make a move, cool. If they don't, fine.
Do you think Patrick Williams, if healthy, is that move? Do you think they're counting on we know that Mark Eversley and AK are very cerebral and they're going to keep things close to the chest. This is not a team that really has a lot of leaks that come out. So I wonder do you think they know where Patrick Williams is going to be come March and April? Is that the acquisition for this team?
And see, that's the other part of it, because if you wait, then you're going to get a guy who was already not necessarily assertive when he was in the lineup when healthy, trying to get him reacclimated to a group that's already shown that they are, a group of alphas. So now how is he going to fit into that group? And I think, honestly, part of maybe what soured my opinion of him with this group is seeing Scotty Barnes and his aggressiveness and how that would impact the Bulls right now. And I think that's what they kind of need at that spot is a little bit of nasty. They need somebody who's going to be a little bit rough. That's not Vooch, right? Javonte Green's got some attitude, but he's 6'3", right? You got Derrick Jones is 6'5", but he's like 120. Like it's you need an enforcer for better or worse, or for no uncertain terms. Thad Young would be perfect in this role. Honestly, I would take that if he gets bought out in San Antonio. A return to the Bulls would be, oh my gosh. Even Paul Millsap, who's a free agent, would be great. They just need somebody with a little bit of attitude, a little bit of toughness that maybe won't cost them Pat Williams, but if it came down to it and somebody who was a difference maker in that position came available, I wouldn't be against making that move.
And I think you just nailed it on the head, right? It's difference maker. It's the person that you think gets you to championship number 7, the first title post Michael Jordan. The toughest title your organization's ever going to have to win is after getting out of that shadow. And if it costs you a guy, a puppy that has big paws, that has huge potential, but if there's a move out there that you could get as a big that's going to solidify you in a matchup against Embiid and Giannis and possibly DeAndre Ayton or any of these, the Joker, any of these guys in the Western Conference, you have to do it. But with that, I'll leave you with this one, Josh. Let me ask you this. This is something I've been wrapping my brain. I think Chicago radio has some of the best sports radio, some of the best media in the entire nation. It's some of the most talented people. And here locally, in a lot of the sports station, there was a downturn on the Bulls when they went on that losing streak. Rightfully so. They went against good teams, and they didn't perform well. But I kept hearing this conversation of a Bulls matchup against Giannis. How are they going to defend Giannis? How are they going to defend Embiid? What are they going to do in this situation? And I just don't understand this conversation. You're a much smarter man than me, especially when it comes to these things. Who in the NBA can guard these guys? If anybody did have them, they would be the ones who were the 2-time MVP, winning the NBA Finals. So even though the Bulls, that is a weakness, is there only so much they could do anyway? How much can you stop Giannis, KD, Embiid?
So you just try to slow them down. You don't stop those guys. They're generational talents. That's why they are who they are. But you try to get in the way, and then you try to find a counterattack to that to at least make them expend a little bit more energy on the other end of the floor. Make them work for their looks. The Hawks played against Giannis the other night, and Onyeka Okongwu was really physical with Giannis and just really kind of made him uncomfortable the entire night. Giannis wants to be the bully, and when somebody's taking it to him, that kind of just changed the entire tone of the game. He did the same thing Okongwu did to Karl-Anthony Towns the following game and just really got in Cat's face and made him uncomfortable. You have to do that with those kind of guys and kind of assert yourself because they are dominant forces on the floor. You have to show them that on this night, it's going to be me.
We got two more NBA ones, so we're going to let you go because as we're recording this behind the scenes, the Chicago Bulls and the Milwaukee Bucks are doing battle just up north in the state of Wisconsin. It is going to be an interesting one between the Bucks and Bulls. This is their first matchup of the season, so really crazy that it's this deep into it, and we've seen that. Speaking of the Eastern Conference, first of our last two, what's up with the Atlanta Hawks?
Yeah, so a lot. They came into the season healing up from off-season procedures. They've had guys in and out of the lineup. At one point, they had the largest roster in NBA history with like 26 players, a record number of NBA 10-day contract players. They're getting healthy now. They moved cameras out of there who, not necessarily was a locker room cancer, but was kind of disrupting the balance of things. And they seem a little bit more balanced. Their energy's been better the past couple of nights. They're up 13 right now in the Miami Heat. So if you're looking at me, my eyes keep going to the side. I'm not trying to be rude. I apologize. I think that they can still figure it out, but they have to fix some things. They got to fix that perimeter defense. They got to be more consistent offensively and honestly just keep doing everything else because they do a lot of the other little things really well. All of it is fine. It's really just been defense.
Josh, we love you anyway because not only are you giving us gold content, you're also scouting and getting ready for us and reporting. That is why you're the man. So that's why we have to ask you this final one before we let you go. The Lakers are done, right?
Yeah, look, I say that. I'd agree with that, but then there's still LeBron James, and I know it's year 1,000, and he's 50 million years old, but he's still LeBron freaking James, and as long as he can dribble the basketball and get up and down the floor, I'm not going to count him out completely. I just can't do that.
Oh, I know. We all want to. It's the Tom Brady effect. We all want to do it. We all want to see the demise, but then at the end of the day, he's going to be in the conference finals more than likely. More than usually. I don't know if it actually happens this year, but that's typically how this thing ends up. Josh, where can the people find you? What are you working on? I mean, it's wild card weekend. As of this recording, all the games would have happened, but this video will be up. So what are you doing this coming up weekend in the sports world?
I am actually watching these games tonight, and then I will be recording the pod, 000. Follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck, and then 30pod. And my picks for this week, I'll just give you my picks real quick because that will be I want people to know that I know. I'm going to take Cincinnati. I'm taking San Francisco. I'm taking Kansas City, and I'm going to take Tampa Bay. I was going to take Buffalo, but I'm going to go against my brother on that one. So.
Attaboy. There you go. Yeah, I mean, my preseason Super Bowl pick was Bills-Packers, but I actually just on our friends at DraftKings put a nice little allowance on the Bengals beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to as long as Jimmy Garoppolo isn't literally giving the ball to the other team, you let Debo and you let Elijah Mitchell and George Kittle do the thing. And look at this is where, and I'll let you go on this one. I know. If you go,
you're good.
Okay. But think about Aaron Rodgers. The thing that usually kills Aaron Rodgers is when he has to beat you by himself. He has to force it to Devontae Adams. If they can't establish a run game, what is San Francisco going to do? San Francisco's more than okay. To Kyle Shanahan, it's just more than okay to say, Jimmy, you're going to pass. You're going to give it to Debo and Mitchell 45 times, and that is how we're going to win. There's a reason why Aaron Rodgers only has one Super Bowl, and they came really early. And I think a lot of it has to do with matchups and how football's played in January. And then when it comes to Cincinnati, look at Buffalo and Kansas City are obviously the favorites. But you look at what Cincinnati does. Cincinnati has that raw magic that almost they don't know any better yet, that what they're really doing is disrupting every Tom Brady's last big push, Patrick Mahomes going for another one, and all they're doing is doing it with attitude. They get to the quarterback. Like I think it's a young man's game, and you look at the two youngest teams.
So I kind of equate this to playoff basketball, right? Regular season, you get to run up and down the field, run up and down the court rather, and make all the highlights and all that stuff. Playoff time comes and things slow down. And I think that's kind of what you get in the playoffs, where having been there and done that is probably worlds better than having all the talent, all the youth on your side, because you know what the other side is doing. And again, these quarterbacks aren't going head to head like that. They're facing the other defense, and that other defense has some holes in it, regardless of what you do. And when you've seen it before, it's much easier to find those holes. So like with LeBron, can't count out the Bradys, can't count out, well, I guess it's just the Bradys at this point. You can't count him out. Rodgers too, but I mean, I don't think he's big. I just, maybe that's my bias. I just don't want to see him make it past San Francisco.
Let's just hope they're better games than Wild Card Weekend.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
That was bad, but you know what? That's the NFL. For every one good game, you get 4 bad ones, and then we fool ourselves because of betting and fantasy football. He's one of our favorite people. He covers everything like a blanket. He is Josh Buckhalter. We love him. Thank you so much, Josh. Please,
no problem. Oh, man, my pleasure.
We'll see you soon, buddy. You got more coming up here on the Sports Cubicle and Sports from the Couch. It's Devin Tingle. It's Dan Marver. Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.